The world poured $1.2 trillion into Africa to eradicate poverty, yet the poverty didn't disappear. It just became a highly profitable business. The money meant to rescue these countries is the exact fuel powering the corrupt systems that crush them. This is how Western guilt, billionaire philanthropists, and the charity industrial complex built a trillion-dollar trap. After World War II, the West looked at Europe and saw a miracle. Cities were broken, factories were damaged, millions needed food, jobs, and homes. So America launched the Marshall Plan. It injected billions of dollars into Western Europe. Within a few years, factories reopened, trade exploded, and incomes climbed. America learned one simple, dangerous lesson. Give the poor money and they become rich. That sounds smart. That also sounds perfect for a government speech. Then came Africa. By the 1960s, many African countries were gaining independence after decades of brutal colonial rule. The continent had low incomes, weak schools, short life expectancies, limited electricity, and brand new governments. But Africa also had oil, diamonds, rare earth minerals, massive farmland, and a booming young population. To Western governments, Africa looked like the next big development project and the next strategic ally. So the plan was simple. Copy and paste the Marshall Plan. Send money, build things, fight poverty, everyone claps, roll credits. Except the credits never rolled. In the 1960s, Sub-Saharan Africa was receiving around $500 million in aid every year. By 2010, aid flows into Africa had skyrocketed to more than $50 billion a year. Across 5 decades, more than $1.2 trillion went in. That is finance app needs therapy money. Aid was supposed to end poverty. Aid was supposed to help Africa catch up, but today roughly 600 million people still lack electricity. Clean water is still missing for millions. Africa's share of global trade has barely moved. Many countries still need more aid just to survive the year. So if $1.2 trillion went in, why did so little change? Let's pause for a second. One side says aid is pure kindness, and you're evil if you question it. The other side says aid is pure damage, and we should cut it to zero. Both are lazy simplifications. The real question is, does this kind of help create independence, or does it create permanent dependence? Comment one word below right now, help or trap. And keep watching, because the worst part isn't the money that gets stolen. It is the money spent exactly as planned that still completely fails. The biggest mistake was assuming Africa in the 1960s was like Europe after World War II. It was not. Europe had been damaged. Africa had been structurally underbuilt. Western Europe already had the software of a strong state. It has tax systems, courts, banks, road networks, skilled workers, and functioning ministries. So the Marshall Plan didn't create Europe from zero. It just restarted an engine that was already there. Africa was entirely different. Many African governments had just been born, and the systems they inherited were built for extraction, not development. Colonial governments were not designed to create strong, independent local economies. They were designed to take raw materials out and ship them to Europe. Very legal looking, still theft in a suit. So when foreign aid arrived, it flooded into countries where institutions were deliberately weak. And weak institutions don't turn money into progress. They turn money into a fight over who gets paid first. Aid was supposed to strengthen states, but in many places it just made bad states more comfortable, because money is power. When leaders can get 70% of their budget from foreign donors, they don't need to depend on their own citizens. That breaks the most basic rule of politics. In a normal country, the government collects taxes from people. People pay those taxes, and in return, they expect roads, schools, healthcare, and basic competence. If the government fails, people protest and vote them out. But in an aid-dependent country, the ruler can receive a massive wire transfer from outside. That means the government becomes less accountable to its citizens and more accountable to donors, reports, Geneva conferences, and photo ops. The citizens become the audience, the donors become the customers, and the government becomes the guy saying, "Everything is going great," while the national budget does parkour into private offshore accounts. Aid campaigns usually show you the emotional side: a hungry child, a school with no roof, a village with no clean water, and yes, these problems are devastatingly real. But the money doesn't float directly from your credit card into a child's lunchbox. It moves through governments, agencies, massive contractors, ministries, foreign NGOs, and several offices. Every single step creates a chance for money to leak, sometimes through corruption, sometimes through bad planning, and sometimes through completely useless projects. In some countries, aid made up a massive chunk of the national budget. That sounds helpful, but it also makes the government lazy and creates the ultimate aid trap. Take Malawi. At different points, foreign aid covered up to 40% of their government spending. Then came the Cashgate scandal, where up to $32 million of public money was stolen by officials in just 6 months. Money meant for development helped fund luxury cars, mansions, and the usual public servant private billionaire starter pack. In a normal system, you would expect massive political punishment, but when the state is funded heavily from the outside, citizens have less leverage over the money. They suffer from failure, but they don't fully control the tap. Donors keep sending money because stopping aid looks cruel publicly. Governments keep accepting it because free money is never rejected. Among all these, poverty becomes a highly profitable business model that everyone claims to hate. Now you may argue giving free things to poor people is always a divine act. In the short term, yes, absolutely. If someone is starving, food aid saves lives. If there's a disaster, emergency aid is critical. But the nightmare starts when temporary help becomes permanent competition. Imagine a local clothing maker in Kenya trying to sell shirts. Then a foreign charity brings in shipping containers full of donated clothes from the West and sells them for pennies. The customer chooses the cheaper option because support local manufacturing sounds nice until your wallet has 3 coins and emotional damage. So the local factory loses customers. Workers lose jobs. Machines stop running. Skills disappear. This isn't a theory. In the 1980s, Kenya's garment industry employed hundreds of thousands of people. Today, it is a fraction of that, largely crushed by the flood of cheap, second-hand donated clothing known as mitumba. And once a factory disappears, bringing it back is almost impossible. You lose workers, supply chains, repair networks, and business confidence. Basically, you lose the boring invisible infrastructure that actually makes an economy work, but aid often jumps right over that. It delivers the finished product instead of helping locals build the system to make it themselves. Congratulations. The free shirt arrived, the local shirt factory died. Very sustainable, isn't it? But that's not all. There's another barely visible issue. It's highly technical, so Bono doesn't put it on concert posters. Economists call it Dutch disease or currency distortion. Many countries grow rich by manufacturing and selling goods to the rest of the world. South Korea did it, Taiwan did it, China did it. Factories grew, jobs grew, skills grew. But to do that, exports must remain cheap and competitive. When billions of foreign aid dollars enter a country, it often gets converted into the local currency. And that massive influx raises the demand for the local money, making the currency artificially stronger. When the local currency spikes, everything that country makes suddenly becomes more expensive for foreign buyers. So local goods become harder to sell overseas. Aid literally makes a country feel richer on paper while quietly making its productive economy less competitive. The government gets a fat check today, but local factories lose their future customers. So the country imports more, exports less, becomes completely dependent on aid, and then donors say the country needs even more aid to survive. The cycle reloads. Foreign aid has a broken feedback loop. In a normal business, if customers hate the product, the business loses money and goes bankrupt. That pressure forces them to improve. But aid doesn't work like that. The people paying for aid are taxpayers in rich countries. Those who receive it are vulnerable in poor countries. So the person paying and the person using the product are not the same. A donor feels good because money was sent. An NGO shows a glossy report because money was spent. The government poses for pictures because a project was launched. But the people who were supposed to benefit may still have no work in school, no medicine, no electricity, and no customer service hotline to complain to. The system rewards activity. It rewards PR announcements and ribbon cutting. But nobody has ever been saved by a launch statement. Take the infamous PlayPump project. Millions were spent installing water pumps attached to children's merry-go-rounds. Donors loved the idea. It looked great on camera. But if you look through the right lens, you'll see kids getting tired and local women ending up manually pushing heavy steel merry-go-rounds just to get drinking water. Projects fail because of poor planning, weak maintenance, and imported solutions that look great in London but make 0 sense in rural Zambia. Hospitals open without medicines. Schools open without teachers. Wells break, the foreign engineers leave, and nobody has the parts to repair them. The aid world loves building things. It's far less obsessed with making sure they still work 5 years later. Because maintenance is not sexy. Spending money is not the same as building capacity. Building capacity means locals can run, repair, fund, and improve the system without waiting for another Zoom call with a donor, and that's much, much harder. Now let's be very clear, this isn't an argument for doing nothing. Emergency aid saves lives during famine, conflict, earthquakes, or disease outbreaks. Outside help is the literal difference between life and death. Food, medicine, shelter, vaccines, and emergency logistics matter. Nobody should turn a humanitarian crisis into an economic debate while people are actively suffering. That would be insane and also very linked in. But emergency aid is radically different from long-term development aid. One keeps people alive during a crisis. The other claims it can build entire countries. That claim is where the record gets messy. Long-term growth usually comes from things that are far less emotional than charity. Strong institutions, honest courts, reliable electricity, good ports, safe roads, property rights, schools that actually teach, governments that fear their voters more than they fear losing their donors. These things are not as cute as donation ads, but they are the only things that have ever turned poor countries into rich ones. The goal should be to help African countries produce, trade, govern, and grow entirely on their own terms. That means supporting local businesses instead of crushing them with free imports. It means buying from African suppliers whenever possible, funding projects through systems that local citizens can actually audit and monitor. Ask people what they actually need before spending millions on something they never asked for. For decades, the story told to the world was beautifully simple. Africa is poor because it lacks money. So the West must give money, but poverty is a lack of functioning systems. If you pour $1 trillion into broken, weak systems, those systems just become highly optimized at absorbing money. Africa was told that aid would create independence. Too often it created dependency. Too often it became a roadblock. If this story made you question the clean, heavily edited version of global charity, subscribe. See you soon in the next video. History does not just repeat, it rhymes. So make sure you're listening for the next Money Echoes. Subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.